is 7-6 left. Freiburg goes for the kill. He's going to pick it up. If just exists survives, he's going to win the round. There's no time. Oh my God, Freiburg, are you kidding me? Because of it. Freiburg is going to be great.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of By the Numbers with me, your host Richard Lewis, and with me Duncan Shields, the expert analyst. You know him as Thorin, and yes, he is looking rather jacked these days. A few people have been commenting on that. Have you been working out in Korea, mate?
Not really.
No, people are talking about it, you know.
Okay.
As I'm getting more and more overweight, you're getting more and more jacked. It's like
that
the
might be
picture
what
of
it is.
Dorian
The
Gray.
contrast, I think.
Yeah, possibly.
It's all perspective, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm gonna get some sort of surgery or something.
I mean, as I've mentioned many times, that is also another ulterior motive we have for keeping Scoots around. That's how we sort of retain our youth, just in relation to him, as he becomes the oldest man in the world.
Well, he always has been, though. That's the best thing about Scoots.
Brilliant, isn't it?
20 years ago, he was old. 20 years hence, he's still old.
He's basically like that movie, like Curious Case of Benjamin Button, but if he just was old when he was a baby, but just never got younger, just grew up.
But it's a shame. It's a shame we're not going to be working with him at these events we've got coming up, Duncan. I'm going to miss him. Him quite a bit. So, but anyway, look, there's been all sorts of shit going on in CSGO, but we're going to take a bit of a departure for this show because I think the first thing we should really focus on is some breaking news that's happening. Literally, it was announced just before we sort of put the show together.
Okay.
And that is, I don't know if you heard about this, but MTG, that's Modern Times Group, the company that bought 74% of ESL for 78 million euros, is now been revealed, according to Breakit.se, to be attempting to buy a substantial interest in DreamHack as well. And I'd been pursuing this story for 7 days, so I've obviously got some new information on it that I think Breakit don't have. But first of all, I guess I just want to get your reactions to this. It looks like we're heading towards some sort of esports monopoly.
Yeah, that's actually the first thing I thought when you said that, which is, now listen, the circuit is massive. There's obviously Gfinity and CEVO. There is a lot of other tournaments. But when you talk about ESL and DreamHack, who do all of the majors between them, at that point, you are in a weird American sort of way, starting to talk about like antitrust and stuff. And would these people like for example, if you were worried before about exclusivity, well, if someone has DreamHack and ESL, I mean, you're already like 70% of the way towards completely locking people out of the scene. So I hope that's not going to be the case. I hope they just want to buy it and have some say in it. But that's certainly something I'm initially thinking, like, what does that really mean for DreamHack and ESL as two companies that before weren't related in any meaningful sense, right?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, so MTG, obviously we're talking about MTGX. That's the sort of digital component of the Modern Times Group. Now, MTGX already have an existing relationship with DreamHack. I'm pretty sure that before they bought ESL, they might even have engaged in talks about buying DreamHack at that point. There was a rumor that was going around at that juncture. Now, I don't know if you followed this, but when DreamHack announced that mega studio that they had, that was MTG's doing. That was sort of MTG that were funding that. And my sources indicate that studio is probably costing MTG, I don't know, like maybe €1 million or so annually. And
where does a company like that get their money from? How do they make it?
Well, they're a media company. They have TV stations, and obviously with TV stations, that's ad revenue. They've got digital platforms. I mean, they are exactly what they say on the tin. They're basically a media, a Swedish media conglomerate, if you like, and they broadcast in places as far afield as Lithuania. I think they've even got an African TV station, as well as Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. They have some sort of joint TV share with some Russian TV stations as well. So I mean, it's a very broad market that they have, and they obviously have serious amounts of money. I mean, if I remember rightly, well, this is absolutely true. I do remember rightly. They were the people who were behind ViaGame as well, the digital streaming platform. Because I think they have something called Viaplay, and I think ViaGame was sort of an offshoot of that brand. They were the ones that did the Hearthstone tournament, that of course was exclusive at DreamHack. And again, it shows that relationship that the two companies already have. Now, getting back to the thing I was just talking about was, all right, so you've already got MTGX probably is dumping €1 million annually into this studio that they're paying for, I'm pretty sure, entirely. So it's a partnership, but MTG are getting the thick end of the wedge. And I think that it makes total sense that MTG would eventually acquire them. I mean, you're talking about the biggest digital media company in Sweden and the biggest LAN in Sweden. It would be crazy if they weren't working on some level in a way. But of course, as you rightly point out, with the majors, this does create a problem for me. This creates something I think we actually need to be really cognizant about, because if this deal goes through, and I don't know if it will be a total buyout, I find that unlikely. I think it will most likely be a controlling interest, anything from 66%, maybe even more shares. But then where's the third party that's going to run a major to sort of break up this, MTG dominance? That's the real question.
Well, no, I mean, whenever you start talking about huge companies who have controlling interests outside of esports and are big media companies and have all that hierarchy where they all connect into other companies in the world, basically, in short, Richard, do I ever have to worry if I keep talking shit on organizers about being killed by the Illuminati?
Well, I think we're at that stage, mate.
Okay.
Think about it, though, right? Do you remember on other shows, Duncan, we've done? Do you remember how you were going, yeah, ESL, I don't need to worry about doing the majors because I've got a fit blonde girl called DreamHack, and I get to fuck her all night and all this, right? Well, mate, that blonde girl's fucking grown a dick and is about to fuck you, because if MTG own all the fucking people doing the majors, you could be in a fucking world of hurt. Think about that.
Yeah, that could be the end for me, mate.
Yeah, it could be, mate. You'll just have to make more sick Alphadraft money.
Not only that, Richard. The only time I've ever met any of the people from MTG is I remember once at a DreamHack. This is a while ago, like a couple of years back. I was at the DreamHack in one of the player area. And I was just talking to some player. I think I was talking like Nanowa, the StarCraft 2 player or something. Yeah. And then I remember there was like a guy sat nearby who Nanowa had been talking to before. And as I'm talking to him, that guy sort of gets involved in the conversation. And people in esports do this, okay? They don't introduce themselves. Sometimes they just start talking, and you just cordially talk to them a bit. You're thinking in your mind, like, I'm not really sure who this guy is. You're not always sure how to take them, And that guy kept saying something about, I work for MTG. And I was like, what, Magic the Gathering? And I was obviously just fucking with him the whole time. And he's like, no, like a big company. I'm like, yeah, Wizards of the Coast. It's like a Pokemon, but bear with like more nerds though. And he was going like, no, it's like a media. And I just kept fucking with this guy over and over again. That's all I remember, mate. So that's probably not the best intro if they're going to take over all of the esports scene. Was
that probably Simon Sundin, I imagine?
Yeah. It was like a blonde guy, yeah.
Yeah, he is quite important. So it's good. Everyone's got that story about Thorin though as well. So
it's true. I don't think he was mad.
No,
it's probably just privileged to be talking.
No, but what happens there is he walks away and goes, "Here, that Thorin's such a character, isn't he?" Yeah.
No, sadly that's what they do. It's all those sorts of people.
If only Richard Lewis was there to handle him and act as an intermediary, it would have been okay. But anyway, so look, back to the point. So here's the other thing. So as I said, I've been investigating this story for about a week. I'm ready to write something up. I just don't have a place to publish it. Obviously, I'm between jobs. I'm being very cautious about where I go next, and plus I'm focusing on this player union thing, which we'll talk about in a little while. So they've done it right. Again, my sources are telling me that they've already done a deal with ESEA. So ESL and ESEA. Where this partnership really works is on the MTG level. That MTG have either, again, controlling interest, or for ESEA, because their turnover is not as big as a DreamHack or an ESL, I think they've relied primarily on the subscription money. It could be a total buyout. And part of this is, so this is good news, part of this means is LP Kane's going to fuck off and retire. So no more of that prick. So I mean that's.
You think that'll happen though? He won't just be like put in as like a cheap CEO or something.
No. The part of the buyout is, he's gonna get a big fat check, obviously. 'Cause
Okay.
He's 50-50 with Torbal.
Oh, yeah.
But he's gone. He's literally onto his next project.
Here's the thing, that would be brilliant for esports. Because here's the thing,
yeah.
I actually know him quite well because, well, reasonably well. I used to work with him like 10 years ago, so I obviously don't know him in the last 10 years. But as an actual, purely in his original skill set as a coder, he seemed like he was a guy he was quite competent, and he was a guy who would go out there and find out how to do something if he didn't know, So in the early days, when you are setting up services or you're having to like innovate, well, I guess the terminology now would be like solutions to different digital problems. See, MTG, I could fit right in, mate. So when he was trying to do all that shit, he actually seemed like he knew what he was doing, right? So he's really good at that sort of thing. The problem is now his company's not really about that anymore, now that we're just hosting big tournaments and it's in the circuit. So unfortunately, that's where his personality that maybe worked in that kind of realm doesn't really fit in the modern day stuff. And you've already seen scenarios where, I mean, I don't give a fuck, mate. I'm just going to say this now. There's certain scenarios where casters for ESEA who've been involved with casting or in some way on-camera talent basically are sort of like owned by ESEA and don't get a say in which events they do, and sometimes are not even allowed to go and do other events. Otherwise, they're sort of like, you're fired if you do that, which I think is extremely unhealthy for a scene that's got a big open circuit like we have now, and where some of the talent there's a lot of talent out there needs to have a chance to go to different events and test them out and see which events make sense for them. You can't be fucking around with like.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Well, look, to put that in context. Obviously, you've got guys like Apollo, right? The StarCraft 2 caster, a really talented individual, and he's an ESL employee, right? And does a lot of work for ESL. It's not like he just casts. He's a bit more hands-on in terms of, production and talent management. Kind of similar to like what Red Eye used to do over at ESL. Now, they let him go and work for DreamHack. Who are, ostensibly a rival, right? I mean, maybe not now, but, back in the days before the corporations had come into esports, and they had no issue with that because it was good, he's all about the StarCraft, and they allowed that. So for ESEA to be that egregious, I agree. I don't see how that's helpful to either the talent that you're meant to be nurturing and giving a platform to, but it's not really helpful to esports either, because it's not like we've got an abundance of people like Moses, for example, is it? I mean, he's a fucking unique talent. He enriches every event he attends, and if people like ESEA are saying, well, you can only attend the events that we fucking say, for example, just using him as an example, not saying it is about him, but that would suck, right?
No doubt.
So I mean, look, I definitely think once LP Kane's out the picture, ESEA will be a much better. I mean, seriously, like my respect for them would just it immediately increases.
Well, as soon as they're involved, then I'd be behind. For example, hey, if we're going to do an NA major, well, they've definitely got the infrastructure to do it. They've got all those experienced people at that ESS company, and so why not? They could probably do it. It'd be fine, I'm sure.
The thing is, as well, it also makes me fucking not forgive them for the Bitcoin thing, but at least you can say the mastermind of the Bitcoin thing and the person who enacted it are fucking out of the picture. Yeah. So the chances of that happening again are slim to none. So look, getting back to the point again, MTG, it seems, according to my sources, that they've got this, controlling share, if not total ownership of ESEA. They've got a, 3/4 majority share in ESL. Now they're looking to acquire a 2/3 majority, if not greater, in DreamHack. What needs to happen here to break this up? Is there anything we can do, or are we just going to have to accept that one company has the potential to pretty much run all of this, the premier CSGO content output?
I mean, it is definitely the case that the big problem is the fact that they're getting DreamHack as well, because the one possible countervailing force to the idea of ESL doing their own exclusive thing was the notion that if DreamHack just kind of paired with all the other people who aren't ESL, then you could still somehow have sort of like enough of the rest of the share of the market that you could sort of battle against it or hold them off, with some sort of like a checkmate. So it is worrying that it's DreamHack, because actually when I think of all the other orgs, I think even if everyone else got together, if Gfinity, Sevo, MLG, I'm trying to think who else there even is at this point, PGL, even if all of those people got together in some sense, I don't think they could add up to what DreamHack, ESEA, and ESL have. So they would be the minority in that respect. With that said, though, in a weird way, the fact that this MTG company is going so ham and investing so heavily, I think kind of spells what will end up making them not just rule the whole CSGO scene, which is I've heard over the last 6 months or so, all sorts of different kind of hints and stories about these huge other companies around the media world wanting to get involved and do their own televised leagues and do this, that, and the other. And so I get the feeling that this is maybe just they're the ones striking the first ground here and trying to get in position, and kind of get some favorable territory. But I think if we're going to go that way, where there's hundreds of millions getting put in, that actually might be some sort of like a mini gold rush, and a bunch of other big companies, maybe even bigger companies than them, maybe big American companies, come in and they want to get involved, and maybe that's the way it balances out to some degree. With that said, though, once massive companies get involved, at that point you almost have no say over whether leagues become exclusive and all that sort of thing, because when they've got that sort of money, no one's going to stand up to them, I don't think.
A little bit of devil's advocatory here. Could this be potentially a good thing? Because if you've got ESEA in place, and you've got ESL in place, and you've got DreamHack in place, definitely makes it very easy to create a consolidated world tour that has regular dates that don't overlap. The element of competition is removed, so everybody is effectively cooperating, which is ultimately what we wanted in the first place, right? We did want everyone to get around the table and, like, look, stop clashing event dates, just work out a global tour, have your majors equally spaced out around it, equally between the companies, and that's what's good for Counterstrike. Now, we were in a similar position with Dota, where we had all these companies providing awesome events, and you had Valve's International sort of as the high point of the season, the full stop at the end of the sentence, but then it got oversaturated. So, I mean, this could be one way of offering a definitive global tour and preventing this oversaturation.
I mean, the key thing about any sort of like single controlling force, like a dictatorship, is, in theory, if it was a benevolent person running it, it would be the best system, because they would have all total control. Therefore, they could, in an entirely consistent and coherent manner, enact whatever they thought was the right way to do things, and as a result, be really efficient. Because one of the problems of democracy type scenarios is people just standing against your interests just for their own petty reasons, and it becomes like a bureaucracy, and everything grinds to a halt. So, in a sense, yeah, I think it could be better. The problem is, the key part of that is you have to be the benevolent dictator. And so I don't know these people enough to know that they actually would be benevolent in that sense. Because unfortunately, a lot of the people in esports who out of one side of their mouth tell you, I'm all about esports, I want the scene to grow, and it's really about the gamers and making sure they have careers, out the other side of their mouth go, and when I get in control, I'm going to fuck everyone.
Yeah. Well, it's true, though, as well. I mean, Jesus, like, the amount of times I've heard people say, all I want to do is grow esports. Like, if we grow the pie, everyone gets a bigger slice, right? You've heard that. I know I fucking heard that a bunch of times. And then they're always the cunts that put exclusivity deals in place. They're always the people that put really egregious and overreaching contracts in place. They're the most cutthroat, little finger motherfuckers on the planet, like, every time without fail.
It's like, always like some Riot type person who's like, we just want esports to grow, we want the pie to get bigger, and then they're just like arresting anyone who has pie making facilities or even has notions of what a better pie could be, actually erasing from history all past pie recipes, and then just make it so that at this point they're like the shittest pie they make. They're like, it's better than the last one we made. You're like, yeah, but there's a lot better pies out there. Silence him.
Yep.
He is a pie heretic.
Yeah, burn the history of pies. In the library about pies. But the point is, like, don't bring fucking Riot into this fucking podcast, dude. Don't.
Okay.
Come on.
Have I triggered you?
Look, we know the trigger words, right?
I should have just fucked with you when you were like, what if it's a good thing? I'm like, yeah, because actually there was a really awesome scenario where this game company called Riot took over, and they actually made it kind of like a paradise, like an idyllic state for esports.
I wouldn't have bought that. Like,
okay, fair enough. Yeah,
that would have been.
I couldn't sell that. It's true.
Yeah, no chance. But you know, look, the holy trinity of trigger words are unprofessional, exclusivity, and Riot. Like, those three will tip me over the fucking edge. Into oblivion. But look, so let's sort of wrap up with the final point here. This could, on the one hand, like I said, having a unified tour, a global tour, a very clear thing where it's like, you know, if you add ESL sort of majors and the IEMs to DreamHack's European and now global to now that we have DreamHack Austin, and then you throw in ESEA and their US infrastructure, all of a sudden you've got something that could look really special. But the problem is, what happens to the Face It events, who previously partnered with DreamHack? What happens to the PGLs, who've also partnered with DreamHack? I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess MLG, who have ultimately partnered with no one, but did put on a good event at X Games. What happens to these guys? What happens to these outliers? Oh, and of course, Gfinity,
Starladder,
Jet, and Starladder. I mean, because look, there was originally there was one of the groups that were going to kind of push back against ESL having this large market share. There was a group of 4 organizations, which if I remember rightly, DreamHack was one of them. It was DreamHack, PGL, Face It, and Starladder. They were going to create their own sort of alliance, if you like, and stop ESL and whoever they partnered up with having this dominant market share. But now DreamHack's kind of broken ranks by the looks of it, and they're going to fall in with the ESEA, ESL, and DreamHack all owned by MTGX. So... the question is, what happens to all these other guys? Because they could really get squashed out. Like if ESEA, ESL, and DreamHack do all come under the same umbrella organization, and they elect to basically just, okay, we're now being aggressive with our dates. So sorry, Face It, your finals are going to happen at a DreamHack. Sorry, MLG, it's going to clash with an ESL Valve endorsed major. They could really aggressively push everyone out of the scene right now from CSGO.
Yeah, that's the worry, because especially, I mean, the main one that I'm worried about is someone like Face It, because the key thing about someone like Face It is that the way they built up actually it is like a rags to riches story, and they've really like come leaps and bounds constantly, and they have done it in like a sensible manner, and they've done all these things correctly to get to the point where they're almost on the brink of being like a DreamHack. They're not quite there yet, but they're almost there. And if this sort of a deal comes in and locks them out, all you're basically doing there is those same sort of people who are like, oh, just want esports to grow, are fucking exactly the entrepreneurs that esports needs, who take chances and have done the right things and then now got to the top level, and now you're locking them out. Like, to me, you can only perceive that as a negative thing. It's one thing if you do an extremely soft exclusivity where essentially you just offer much more money and teams choose not to go to the other guy's event, but most likely it's somewhere in between, like you're describing, where you're not going to publicly say, hey, we're fucking Face It, because then the fans will get really annoyed. Instead, what you do is you purposely fuck with them by doing like what you're saying. You pick your dates after they announce theirs, after they book a big venue. You put your dates on the same thing, and you make it so that obviously no one's going to their tournament. And you not only are you like cutting them out, but you actually maybe even put them into financial ruin at that point if you do that sort of stuff.
I mean, to put this in perspective, just as points of information for the viewers, because obviously I know CSGO has attracted a lot of new people to the scene. Let's look at examples where this has happened before, this type of aggressive posturing, and where it hasn't worked. So in StarCraft in particular, back when StarCraft was the big show, I know for a lot of esports, new esports fans, it's hard to believe. But there was a time when StarCraft was viewed as a license to print money. The casters were demanding ridiculous things, like 10,000 euros a day, just insane amounts of money. It was the esport that really started to get us into this modern era of esports. Now, I remember when MLG and DreamHack went head to head, and MLG pioneered a bunch of stuff. I mean, they did pay-per-view, which the fans didn't like. I think we're going to see pay-per-view again real soon, by the way. And I think CSGO will be one of the lucky recipients of that model. But MLG and DreamHack went head-to-head. They ran events on the same weekend. All it did was dilute the viewership, because you had to choose which event am I going to watch religiously. Right? I'm gonna engage in this one, or engage in this one. And of course, because one was Native American and one was Native Europe, obviously time zones came into
Native American.
Yeah, well, not literally, not literally. I'm thinking about that guy crying while he looks at the letter, like by the side of it.
It's sitting chief bank balance. Look at his shit. His land and territory is huge.
Chief pay-per-view. But anyway, so yeah, you know what I mean, right? American and Europe. So it divided the audience. On that grounds as well. It's like, well, look, if the American event was on a weekend, and I'm European, fuck it, I'll just change my sleep pattern and watch the American event. Oh, there's a European event, a big European event, on the same weekend as a big American event? Well, fuck that, I'll just get a normal night's sleep and I'll watch that European event. So it totally diluted the viewership, and it didn't work. And that was when, if you remember, shortly after that, that was when we had the trifecta press release of ESL, DreamHack and MLG saying, hey, we're all going to work together. We're going to enter in the spirit of unity. And they've all admitted to me privately, the only thing we worked on together was that press release. We never worked together again after that. So you had that as an example. On a smaller scale, in Denmark, there was two big LANs. They were famously kind of at war with each other. You had DS Rack and you had Slap. They were run by two different people that used to own a LAN cafe together, right? And then they argued with each other and tried to sue each other in the business, and it crapped out. And then they set up two separate LAN companies. Anyway, they decided aggressively to host these two big events in Denmark on the same weekend. And it became this snowballing. One day, it would be, okay, our prize fund's 10,000 euros. And then the next day, okay, right, now ours is 15. Come to our event. Ours is 20, 30. And it just got to this ridiculous level where you knew no one was ever going to get the money anyway. And that's what happened. Everyone went to the DS Rack event that had the higher prize fund. And I think Very Games got paid in cash. Dynamic, which was, of course, Steel's old team, they got paid in cash. I think everyone else just got fucking, get fucked, see it. It was like they had to wait and pay online, many months later. And that was just because they ended up in this ridiculous competition that no one could win, a big dick measuring contest. So I've yet to see a direct head-to-head competition in esports where the fans, the teams, the people that effectively make esports, not that I want to pander too much, but the people that matter in esports. I've never seen a clash like that where it's worked out for their benefit.
No, I mean the problem is the type of competition I like is when people aren't directly trying to fuck the other guy; they're just trying to proper competition, trying to be the best they can be.
Raise
so
the
when
bar.
the other guy does a big event, you want to top his event, but 2 weeks later, and do a better for example, one thing I thought was great, not just because I like the format, is when everyone was complaining about the ESL major, about the fact that it had best of one groups and the qualifiers was best of one and all these problems, the way Gfinity and who else was it, MLG, all these companies came out and that moment said, you know what, we're going to commit that we're going to do best of three for our events. And obviously they were doing it to kind of fuck with the ESL a little bit, but they were doing it because that's like a smart move in terms of competition to show that we're going to improve ours in a way where we're going to beat you in terms of execution. It's not like they were literally like, we're going to hold our best of three event on the same day. It wasn't like that. It was a healthy competition.
Yeah. Just before we move on, I will get your final thoughts. I mean, gut feeling, gut reaction. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Does it need to be opposed? Is there anything we can do? If the community has an apoplexy and tries to shame MTG, is it going to change anything?
I think there's probably nothing we can do when you get to that sort of money and that sort of backroom power dealing and all that sort of shit. I'm kind of a bit neutral on it. I don't necessarily, I haven't really seen that they've done anything crazy with ESL that seems dangerous or anything. It doesn't seem like they've changed the course of it that much. So I'm not too worried right now, but I'm mildly concerned that maybe this could be you're putting all the pieces in place before you execute whatever big master plan. That's the only concern I have. So at the moment, not that worried, but I think I have to have it in the back of my mind. I have to see how it plays out in the next sort of year or so.
Could the master plan, this is theory crafting, I certainly haven't heard anything to this effect. Could the master plan be, they tried to do the exclusivity league, the teams asked for too much, they didn't want to commit to exclusivity, they wanted to sort of have their cake and eat it, get the financial rewards of exclusivity while still being able to play in other leagues and other tournaments. If you create this global world tour with ESEA, ESL, DreamHack, and then you go back to the teams and it's look guys, it's exclusivity or we fucking lock you out. Right? It's exclusivity or we lock you out. Could that be the long play here?
Even though people in public would think, well, that sounds like such a far-fetched concept, what you have to realize is with all this shit going on with players and unions, that's because players themselves are now realizing, primarily actually because of the sticker economics, just how much money's out there and how much they can kind of do power plays themselves with their own orgs. Like, listen, we'll go somewhere else who's offering us a 90% share or whatever. So as a result, I do feel like everyone is positioning themselves like that. So people are trying to make big moves like that. So that could be something that is going on in that sense, because we ourselves know, you said it on a past podcast, that Gfinity themselves had kind of been pushed around a little bit by some of the teams for that last the Summer Masters 1, where the teams basically made them put the prize money up and then still pay for them to all go. And so it was almost like they just doubly fucked over Gfinity. So you can see that players themselves and teams are trying to push back against organizers. So I mean, hey, listen, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. The orgs themselves are going to try and do that themselves. So I think there might be a component of that.
And of course, let's remember this is the same environment where you write about Riot Games. You sown the seeds now, not paying for teams who are in Korea to attend Worlds. And apparently all the League of Legends fans support that. Wouldn't fly in Dota 2, wouldn't fly in CSGO, but apparently in League of Legends it's okay. Like,
the thing is, when you said, like, is this all setting the stage for... I thought you were going to say something like, no. DreamHack signs you to their 2016 tour. And I'm like, yeah. And then they announced DreamHack Katowice, powered by ESL with Jason Kaplan desk host. And I'm like... That would be dark, mate, if that was like the timeline I was headed into, and I just didn't know. It was all power play, well, the whole thing.
Do you know what, though? I mean, this is what... Fuck, I mean, we haven't even brought Valve to the table here. Like, keep in mind, like, I know Valve, right? Like, perhaps better than a lot of people. It isn't to say we're like, I'll ever get to go to their offices or, like, give Gabe a hand job or whatever. Like, we're not that close, right? Definitely not. But I've talked to Valve, like, I it's no secret, got a lot of respect for them. I think they're one of the better games developers out there, even in esports terms. But I know Valve don't like any of this stuff. Like, it definitely makes them feel uncomfortable when one group or one organization ends up being a bit more, like, super powerful than the others. I know that they weren't mad keen on the idea of an exclusivity league. I know that they are advocates for players' rights and ensuring that there's a nice, healthy ecosystem in place. But equally, they never want to be hands-on about that. Okay? So all they want to do is reserve the right to withdraw their support if they feel something is bad. They never want to have to dictate and control it, which is fair because I don't think they have the staff to do that. As we've said on previous podcasts, I think the team for CSGO is like 7 people. It just isn't, sure, hire more if you want, but if that isn't viable for Valve, for whatever reason, don't do it. But I mean, like, Valve might not like this. Like, Valve could say, okay, right, you're creating a super conglomerate of fucking these 3 big companies. We're going to start giving majors to other people to encourage some pushback. Maybe you end up seeing something crazy like a Gfinity or something like that get a major just to fucking, re-establish the status quo. Do you think that's within the realms of possibility?
The thing with that is, I'm not sure that the problem is the second part is why I don't think it would happen, because as you kind of were referencing, even though Valve don't like it, they don't tend to be that hands-on themselves in that respect. So I don't know that they would like do that part, like actually like favor the others in that sense, because one of the problems I see with Valve, okay, here's how it shows how different perspective can be. So when you talk to pro players and when you talk to organizers like DreamHack and ESL, they'll go, oh, Valve are wonderful. They're so interested in esports and they come to our events and they're talking to everyone and they're doing all this stuff. And that's exactly why I don't think Valve really give enough of a fuck about CSGO esports, because all they do is go to a couple of their own fucking majors, stand around for like the first 2 days, talk for an hour or two to a few players, and that's it. So their entire year, and this is their whole job. Remember, CSGO is making hundreds of millions of dollars and has all this incredible, I don't know, hundreds of millions, I might exaggerate that. It's making millions and millions of dollars. It's got all this incredible stuff around it. And they're not putting massive amounts of it. Like, if we got the 5 head people who are in charge of CSGO for Valve, and we just asked them a few questions. Who plays for Titan? Who do you think will win the next major? I wonder if they could even answer some of these questions. I think some of them would be looking at you with blank stares and don't know anything about the esports side of things. And they really are just people who still think they're just working on a small multiplayer game. And so I actually worry in that sense that it's a bit like Blizzard. Part of the reason I think Blizzard fucks up so much in StarCraft 2 isn't that they're actual cretins and they're totally incompetent. It's that I don't think they ever... the head people really were involved enough in esports to have a proper sense of the land, the lay of the land, as it were. They didn't really have a sense. And so they were just relying on like a community liaison guy or just things that got through to them through whatever kind of, where they're kind of locked off in their iron tower, you know, whatever would get through to them, you know. It wasn't all the day-to-day stuff. So that's what I worry about in terms of Valve. In a weird way, even though they could oppose this exclusivity, I'd just prefer if Valve actually just stay the fuck out of everything, because at the moment they just haven't shown that they know anything enough about esports that they could make the really nuanced decisions you need to make in these sorts of cases. You know, I don't want them to be some King Solomon-esque figure who's judging this stuff when I don't think they know even the basics.
Yeah, I mean, look, so what I will say is I think I maybe agree with that assessment to a point, but what I've come to learn more recently actually is that Valve are involved in a bunch of meetings, stuff we don't see. For example, when I was at ESL 1 Cologne, they and again, I don't want to necessarily give too much away or break any trust, but Valve had a bunch of meetings, and it wasn't your regular player meetings or hey, do you like the pins or whatever the fuck. They were having meetings with people who were up peripherally, like, you know, on the periphery of the scene. People that were, you know, like maybe they had legal expertise and were looking to get involved and help players out. Maybe it was, managers. You know, it was there was a lot of they did occupy themselves at that event with, like, seriously, they were wedged for meetings. I mean, every time I went past the Valve area to do interviews with players or whatever, they were talking to someone. They were in conference, and I think this is Valve's biggest fault ultimately, is that I think they do a lot more than we'll ever know, but they never communicate with us directly about what they're doing. So it's always a surprise. Like, think about every update we've ever had on CSGO. Like, normally, okay, this is a typical CSGO update. Fixes one major bug that the community super likes, creates 2 others that the community definitely don't like, and then the rest is a bunch of shit we never even thought about and we need time to process. That's pretty much a typical Valve update. Now, I honestly believe that because the team's so small, that actually focusing on those things and delivering those things takes up so much time that they're always behind on sort of the community zeitgeist, like where we all are collectively. So, like, take for example, how long have we been complaining about jumping hitboxes, especially in relation to the Jump Scout? Well, the latest patch they've just put out addresses that, but it's broke a bunch of other stuff, and you know, we've already seen like a number of events where the Jump Scout's been exploited. But actually, they have fixed that one problem now, you know, just testing it out very basically and seeing footage of it. Looks like they're actually on the right road. You know, this could be something that is a problem of the past, and wouldn't that be great? But unfortunately, with it, there comes a bunch of other bugs and breaks. And of course, the community gets angry and says, well, how can this happen? You know, what else are you doing? You've got nothing but time. But actually, I don't think that's true, because, as I said, I think the super small team, I think they're attending meetings in terms of leagues and development of the scene. I think they're attending meetings about getting new ideas, and, you know, I know they're super into player welfare, and they've got to fix the game. You know, I think, if anything, I think they're a really small team that's stretched too thin, and if they just had one person that was dedicated to community interaction, I think we'd all think Valve was the best company ever, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of stuff would definitely... Like, the thing, it's the key... I always make this case whenever I talk about when ESL fucks up and they do really bad PR, or when these other companies like Riot even, I always say it's not even always the fuck-up that annoys me.
Yeah.
It's the way it's presented. So you get this feeling when you're an outsider, like, no one's listening to what you're saying. Even if you make a really good point, it's being dismissed out of hand. And it's essentially, it's like the attitude to how they respond to their response is the problem. Whereas instead, if the person just explained, this is why I've done it this way. Okay, I disagree with you on this. Like, I'm not going to change it that way, but here's why it's... If you just had these answers, they would, to a degree, placate you. Like, that's why having a key community figure... Because the difference is, I've always used this example. If they'd hired, when he'd left NIP, Fiflerin as their community liaison person, I probably wouldn't agree, still with... Like, let's even be generous. Let's say I wouldn't agree with only 30% of the things he did, and at 70% I'd be on board with. The 30% I wouldn't agree with, I'd be far less kind of, like, aggrieved about, because I would be able to just go and message him and say, why do you do it that way? And he'd be like, I know you don't agree, but I actually think it should be this way. And I'd be like, oh, okay, then just agree to disagree. Instead, with Valve, we have to speculate on this stuff. We never get to talk about it. We never really get to find out the reason why. No one can contact them and ask them why they're doing this way, or if they're going to in the future consider this. So you feel totally ignored. And as a result, here's a little lesson for people like ESL. When people feel like they're being ignored, they don't just complain, but they're also sort of like, fuck you. Because it's one of the few ways you can get attention, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, throw the fucking tomato at the guy.
Yeah, you do go ham. But yeah, so I'll try and be balanced about it, like just so I don't come across as maybe sucking a Valve's collective dick or whatever. But and I think overall, I think they do a lot we'll never hear about, and I just think if they had any sense, they would have a community person in place to explain stuff. It's like, look, what happened when we did the interviews with the guys at ESL One Cologne? We were like, why does this tournament system have to be this way? And every player I spoke to said, Valve have explained to me on a personal basis. They've explained to players, this is why we want this format. And it's really complicated, and we don't want to tell you their reasons.
Well, think about this though, Richard,
right?
Okay? So I've followed esports for like 15 plus years.
Yep.
I've worked behind the scenes. I've known loads of people involved. I still don't know those reasons. So
Yeah,
they're doing
yeah,
a terrible
yeah.
job of explaining to the public.
Yeah. No, but it's what I mean. So it's like, I almost feel you have to be privileged to be in one of those meetings to begin with. And then it appears that even if you are, you can't ever publicly communicate what you hear. Which, for something as important as tournament format, seems a bit ridiculous, actually.
No, that's very weird, because I can't what it could possibly be. Unless it's literally like, well, you see, we have to have like best of ones, because there has to be a certain number of games to raise the energy so that the macrobes that control the Illuminati and feed off human spirit can eventually enforce the mega ritual, which transforms the earth into a rapturous state, and then the Archons eat humanity's soul. But don't tell anyone about that, or I'll take the sticker money away.
It's all about the Metachlorians and Emperor Xenu. That's what it's all about. So I don't know, man. It is weird. Just a quick question before we go on to the next big talking point. Obviously, the patch was rolled out. Now, I thought this was interesting because obviously there were a lot of bugs when the patch came out, which are in the process of being hotfixed and whatnot. But everybody said it's like no one tests this shit before it gets launched, because we're playing and we're finding bugs within 20, 30 minutes of playing the game, and this is like game breaking shit. So do we need like what League of Legends has, this public beta environment? I mean, again, just to shit on Riot a little bit, because what else am I going to do? They have this public beta environment, but it never fixes anything. It never stops them launching a champion that's overpowered. It never stops a rework being a cataclysmic fuck up. So I know the grass is always greener, guys, but seriously, go onto the League of Legends subreddit and let's see what that PBE has done for people. Right? It's fucking gash. But just coming back, like everyone's been saying, we need this beta client. Now, if I remember rightly, we had one, right? Didn't we have it like you used to have when you got an update, it went to the beta first?
There was something like that, but the problem is I don't think people were directly involved with it. I think you could just opt in or something, and no one did or something.
Yeah, it was like if you had it installed, you could play on the patch before it was rolled out to the main game, and it was typically it went to the beta version before it went onto the main version. This is back in the hidden path era. So again, I don't know how many people remember this. I don't even know if I'm remembering it right, frankly, because I did a lot of beta testing and stress testing for the game, and then sort of ducked out of it while I was doing other things. So, I mean, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think Valve need to do something in regards to patching? Do you think it's acceptable that when a patch is rolled out, there's other issues? Is that something we should just be like, well, say la vie, right? You know, like that's going to happen?
I mean, I would like, not necessarily like a PBE like in League where it's like 1 million people can play in it. I'd like it if there was some sort of a small thing that pros could test a little bit just to give like feedback. I think that would be good because it's very hard. Like this is what happens when patch notes come out. When patch notes come out, it's still very hard to know what the change will feel like in the game. I've seen certain patch notes in games where it looked like this is going to be something, and then you play and you're like, that's actually not that bad. The biggest problem I think with patching, and this goes to all games, especially League of Legends, but it works in CSGO as well. This is also why I feel like the people who do this stuff aren't in touch with esports, because they always have to do really drastic changes. It's never. What I don't understand is in a game like CSGO and League, they patch really often. It's like every month or so, every 2 months. Yeah. So if you're patching that often, if there's something a problem, okay. So at the moment, presumably they thought the M4A1 was a problem. Yeah. So why is the solution not to turn it down a little bit on the dial and see if that fixes everything? Turn it down a little bit more. Instead, it's always like whack it to shit or blast it to totally OP. It's always those two options. I don't know why, because that is the whack-a-mole scenario. It just creates more problems elsewhere, and you get all these weird situations. I think they'd be better off, if they're not going to do the public beta thing, to just have like gradual changes and then kind of see if that's the right direction to head in with it. You know, I'd rather went that way.
Agree. Counterpoint to that argument, of course, is if they look with the Tech 9, for example, when the Tech 9 was overpowered, they did sort of dial it down a little bit. They took some bullets out of the clip, you know, and they made down penetration slightly less. And everyone went, well, the Tech 9's still overpowered as shit. What the fuck is this?
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. Look, I'd hate... The one thing I will say, right, is I would hate to be the person responsible for ever patching and developing a game. Because I just think the reality of every competitive game that's ever existed is a developer makes a game, and you put it in the public domain, and it's the top level of players that really dictate what's overpowered. They figure out all the mathematics, all the exploits, because they're the people who invest more time into it, and they think in a very different way to even your average games developer. Like, you know, somebody that can fucking stare at it and see all the code laid bare, like fucking Neo. It turns out they can't come up with some of the stuff a pro player can. You know, and that's what I mean. Like, the developers... I've always said this. Developers shouldn't be beholden to pro players, but I do think if you ever want to be a serious competitive game, pro player feedback's vitally important to the development of your title, because they are the people that will break your game for you in a way that a developer can't. They're the people that will find out what is optimal. They will set the tone of how the game is played, and then all you can sort of do is react to what they're doing to keep it interesting and fresh. They're super important to the development of any competitive title. Once your pros stop caring, that's when you're on your last legs. So I definitely think pro feedback will be one way to fix a lot of these problems. But I also have got to say, like, I just wouldn't want to do it, man, because it's like you say, it's like cooking, you know, like too much of one thing, you can't uncook the fucking meal. You got to start over again, like, because it's fucked, you know. There's too much salt, you know, too much pepper. It's like really fucking hard, like. So I'm a little bit sympathetic. I am a little bit sympathetic. Like, everybody can say this is how you fix the game, but there's always going to be something that needs patching. There's always going to be something that's overpowered. Like, once you create it, there's no such thing as perfect balance, I don't think, in a game environment, because the best players, the pro players, will always find a way to exploit and create something that's optimal to the point where everything else is suboptimal.
Well, the problem is, though, I do think in CSGO, there will always be massive amounts of problems, just because as a game, it's incredibly flawed on almost every level. And now you're trying to tweak it to be better in free sports and stuff. So actually, in a weird way, I do think you should start over. Like, I actually think with how much money there is in CSGO now, they should literally not fall into the same mistake Riot made. And right now, they should start making plans for a new client or a new port to the Source 2 engine, whatever it is, you know, start but do it with the focus in mind that this is going to be a huge esports game. We're going to transition one day, not now, in a couple of years, but start getting it so that the baseline of that game is really good and is in line with a lot of this shit. And then when you're tweaking stuff, it's not going to be that big a deal. The problem with CSGO is people, yeah, they do hone in on the one small thing to complain about, the Tech 9 or something. But if we're being real, the reason it's frustrating for CSGO is because that's the only thing you can complain about because it's topical. I just stopped complaining eventually about stuff like the fact that the movement's fucking dog shit and the fact that you still can barely spray any of the fucking rifles compared to any other CS game I've played, and it's not controllable to the same degree, and that 3 years into the game, even pro players aren't really spraying that well compared to other CSGO I've seen, CS games I've seen. So in that sort of a world, it is actually like there's huge fundamental flaws in the game, and that's part of why I think there'll always be discontent with CSGO, because a lot of the pros come from the other CS versions. So I actually think in a weird way, it's not unreasonable to say with how much money there is now, and it looks like CS is going to be a big part of esports, they probably should look to the future and consider at some point making another cake, to use that analogy, and just getting the ingredients right from the start, not trying to season something that they've already kind of fucked up.
Yeah, I agree, and you know what? You're on the money, because it's when you leave it too long that the problems fucking occur. It's like
I even get it when when Riot always say like, yeah, but the code's really. I get it, but your problem is if you really believed in esports, you should have started 2 years ago on the new one,
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but this is the thing. I mean, they always said, hey, we never want to make a sequel to League. That was their attitude going into it, which is again, do you know how esports works, or? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Do you want me to fucking get a colouring book out and show you? The thing is, they now, once again, this is classic Riot. And I feel like we're talking about Riot all this fucking time, but this is classic Riot, by the way. This is really different from everyone else. They have these, set in stone rules, these standpoints, they will not deviate from. And then about 2 years after they've set them in stone, they realise they're fucking wrong. And they try and quietly correct themselves. Yeah. They do it every fucking time. Which is why they're now making hires for a sequel for fucking League of Legends.
Awesome.
Tentatively, yeah. Because we're never going to make one, but now we're interviewing people for that job, by the way. I haven't even reported on that yet, but that's true. They're now looking at hires for League 2. And just to fuck Riot, just to piss on Riot's chips even more, they're also trying to make their own FPS.
Why not?
Why not? Because Blizzard are doing it. Yeah. And that's the other thing Riot like to do. What Blizzard doing? Did we mention we totally love and respect Blizzard? What are you doing? You're making a card game? Yeah, we're going to develop one of those. And it's going to get leaked when someone hacks our emails, and then we're going to pretend it was just an in-house thing for a bit of fun. Yeah, honestly, mate, that company. Anyway, right, next thing. Just quick, and then because I want to talk about DreamHack London, obviously, because we're going to be there, and it's going to be fucking awesome. But let's talk about the player unit thing. So, just to put it in context, because I'm not going to assume everyone who watches this show is going to check down my YouTube video or even follows my Twitter. In fact, a lot of people are like, you know what, Richard's really cool, but his Twitter's uncool. I don't know, but can I just ask, how the fuck do you get away with this? Because your Twitter is a fucking disgrace compared to mine, mate. I know, people complain about it a lot. Yeah? Really?
Yeah, the people still complain. They're always like, yeah, I love his work, but his Twitter's a shit show. And I'm like, fuck you. Like, that's pretty much all I do, mate. I don't even apologise, yeah. I'm like, it's like saying, oh, I love the music of Morrissey, but I hate when he gives like interviews that are about political shit. I'd just stop watching the interviews, mate. I have no sympathy for you.
Yeah.
No, but I have to watch all the interviews. Well, you deserve it then.
Actually, though, that's a really good fucking analogy, because, like, you know, if you like Morrissey, you like the Smiths. You know, when he does an interview, this is the guy who said, "Why do we get upset about the Holocaust? That's happening every day to animals." And that's why we should all be vegetarian. Like, he said that in an interview.
Yeah. So obviously, to me, there's not much correlation between the fact you love his music and you don't have to like militant and vegetarianism, you know.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we all know, Richard, people are... Unfortunately, it's just part of the game, isn't it? Because we know that people want personalities and they want to associate the personality with the work, unfortunately. So until we can somehow get out of that celebrity culture, I think it's probably going to permeate esports. So I just kind of tolerate it. Like, I don't apologize for any of that shit. I'm not going to somehow change my fucking Twitter persona, but it's just going to be something. It's going to be a mild annoyance you have to put up with, I think.
I think you get away with fucking murder compared to me. Actually, if I'm honest with you, I think like, you know, I just tweet people like, "You are a moron," right? That's like, oh my god, this is like the worst thing ever. I've seen you go absolutely fucking deep, man, on people. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the other thing as well. I generally will only do the one tweet at somebody, but I've seen you do some sustained tweeting, like just constant body blows. Like, you know what I mean? It's a bomb, Rocco. You got him on the ropes, and you
Exactly.
fucking did it. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's just Thorin." Like, well, why can't I do this? This is fucked up. And you do that little annoying fucking beak face.
It's the best, isn't it? It's
Yeah, I
the
know
best.
you fucking love that.
That's my gimmick.
I know. I wouldn't even dream of doing a smiley.
It's just a smile little face. I'm just happy.
Mate, it's fucking.
I just put that after the most vicious tweets as well. Like, hey, look at this little face. It's
Speaking of that, right, and I'm definitely gonna rip this guy apart on my fucking show. But you know that? Have you seen that, Sean? Not Sean, Clive. That's it.
Oh, right, yeah.
ESEA Clive. I knew he had some fucking mundane name. I don't even know the dude's name. Tweeted at me the other day, right? Because, and this is where it sort of segues into the union thing. Apparently, you know, he's like, somebody, well, like some top player, it might have been Sean Gers, said, "Oh, there's already a player union. We just sort of haven't said anything about it." And he tweeted to me going, and you actually, but I'm guessing you've already muted the guy preemptively, which would be smart. He was like, "Why haven't one of these so-called journalists written about it?"
Which is another classic thing.
Because
doing esports.
A, they've not
Like,
formalised. B, they've made no statements. C, there's no tangible action.
Richard, why weren't you going through Sean Gare's trash to find out like what he's doing at all time? What he's
Well, the thing is, no, I did go through his trash. It was just full of Adderall fucking boxes. That's a joke. That's a joke between friends. So, I'm fucked now. That's
All I'm
that.
saying, Richard, is ESL Cologne, they went really downhill after that. And then then they was in Dubai. We know what their drug policy is.
Mate, it's not worth getting beheaded over, is it? Anyway,
I know, exactly.
it definitely isn't. But anyway, so the fuck, this podcast is fucking outrageous. It's only going to get more outrageous because of the cunt we're talking about. Right. But anyway, so this Clive guy, fucking so-called journalists, right? So I'm just like, whatever, man. Like, you vaguely know who it might be, but I haven't really put it all together yet. I just block him. Like, why not, right? Like, just fucking. I don't want to have this conversation. I'm a so-called journalist. I'm trying to be more healthy and get into arguments less on the internet, right? Because it's just bad for you, Duncan. It's just bad for you, you know. And anyway, so obviously I've left the Daily Dot, right? My ex-editor messages me and says, this guy is wanting to speak to you. And I don't recognise the name because obviously it's his real name. Okay. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, he's emailed me asking for a contact email. He says he's really got to talk to you. It's like, it's important or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And he said, don't want you to be alarmed. But the first thing that came up when I Googled his name was he's on the sex offenders register.
If only it was that easy for all of them, Rich. If only we could just Google them all, see that, there we go. Fox fan, figures match.
No, but then, right, because my editor's a pretty, he's a serious journalist. He used to be a professor in journalism. He goes, in America, though, you can end up on a sex offenders register for the dumbest shit, which is true, actually. Like public urination, you're on the sex offenders register,
Fair enough.
So he said, don't think too much about that. Don't worry about that. So I'm like, I haven't even put it all together yet, what's going on. So then I'm like, I look at the name of who's trying to get in touch with me. And then I look on Twitter and I'm like, I've already got this guy blocked. Oh, it's that guy, right? So I unblock him and I'm like, oh, I heard you wanted to, talk to me. You've been trying to contact my ex-fucking employers. Like, what's up? And he just went into some fucking diatribe immediately about, like, how unprofessional it is. I haven't reported on the place, right? So I'm just like, okay. Then he starts going on about integrity. And that was it. That's my fourth trigger word. Trigger word.
That's one right there.
Right? So I was just like, right, I wouldn't talk about integrity if this is the first thing that comes up in Google when I Google your name. And I tweeted, like, fucking, you're on the sex offenders register. And apparently this makes me unreasonable. This makes me the bad guy. He literally was continuing to lecture me about, nice ad hominem. Like, dude, it goes beyond that. Once you're on the sex offenders register for a crime you're not even denying against an adult woman when you were an adult, what the fuck is going on? So I blocked him again. But he's still complaining about it. Like, how dare I fucking not report on the union? Which brings me to the union. Yeah, this guy's a fucking nutcase. So you block him, Duncan.
I will, mate.
And do not show him beak face. He can't cope with that.
No, that would trigger him right there. He'd be on the roof with a...
He made
he'd be in
YouTube...
the bell tower with a sniper rifle.
He made a YouTube video. Honestly, watch it, man. It's like a scene from Silence of the fucking Lambs. It blew my mind. Okay. He made a video saying about how Richard Lewis doesn't even know what a union is, and he doesn't even... just watch it, honestly. I'm going to tear it apart on my show tomorrow. It's fucked up. So anyway... Apparently, there's a fucking there is a non-formalized union in place of North American players that have come together, and I think that's great. I think that's actually really cool. But I almost feel that they're putting the focus on bargaining collectively to get things done, which can be effective. But I also think it's kind of a bit short-sighted. It's a bit. I think that's the tip of the iceberg, union-wise. I think you can totally do way more, especially if you include more and more people. You know, the way every union I've been a part of works is, like, for example, I was part of a general trade union. Now, Americans seem to have a very skewed idea of how unions work, and obviously that's just because the American system's fucked. It's not as if it's a country that respects labor laws, respects its workforce. I mean, shit, I'm always blown away when I talk to American. He goes, no, we don't deserve free healthcare, actually. I'm like, okay, right, fucking, I'm out of this conversation, guys. But anyway, I worked for a sort of a general trade union across all labor. It was like, it wasn't specialized. You could be in various sectors and still be part of this union. And I still believe for esports, which isn't big enough yet to really specialize, I think that's the way you get strength in numbers. Now, this sounds like a very small group, and I just worry that because it's not formalized and people don't know it exists, I don't know if it can truly represent the interests of all pros. So I just wanted to get a few thoughts about this. First of all, the need for a union. Second of all, if there is a union that's already in place, is this the union to get stuff done? And third, do you have any solutions to the ongoing problem of player rights within esports?
I think you probably do need unions. The main reason you need unions is not in isolation. In isolation, ideally, everyone could just negotiate themselves. Everything would work out fine. It'd be a total free market. The problem is, the reason you always need a union is because it's never a free market when there's a lot of money involved, because big companies don't like free markets. They like to control markets. So big companies are the ones who themselves, in some sense, unionize, fuck everyone over, do exclusive stuff. So the only counterbalancing force is other entities like that, such as for players, if they all band together and make a union. So it's basically the initial aggression always comes from the bigger companies, and therefore the little guy, the player, has to get some of the same tools to fight back with. So I think you definitely need one in that sense. And some of the stories I have heard about the economics of CSGO make it seem all like almost certainly a whole bunch of people are just getting fucked just because they don't have connects with other players who could tell them, like, no, I'm making this much, and this is what I told my manager I need, and this is what he offered. So some people just getting totally fucked in that scenario just because they don't have the information. They don't have any tools themselves to negotiate with. And so I really do hope that can happen. Now, just from knowing the way things work even in real life with unions for trade labor, etc., odds are it's probably not going to be ideal even how that's set up, and there will be some fucked up stuff, like certain people will have too much power, or they'll sadly eventually unions end up using their power against their own members and stuff like that, like you see in the fucking whatever it is, the Screen Actors Guild or whatever that one is in America, where they just fuck people. So there will be a lot of problems, but I think the problem itself, the key problem, already exists, which is that the bigger companies have the control right now. And so even if it's going to create a lot of minor issues, you have to enter into that minefield because it's the only choice, I think.
What about just, I don't know, again, right, so I was having talks with a lot of bench capital types while I was out in San Francisco. And I'm pretty sure I got people who were going to put money on the fucking table for this. And I think we need a slush fund that nobody controls. That's just like an escrow or in a bank account, like whatever it is. Because eventually some big issue's going to come up for a player, either on an individual level or on a broader scale, that's going to require legal representation or something like that. I think that's inevitable. Right, it could be the drugs testing issue. It's something like that where you would need a specialist lawyer to come in and be like, like let's say, for example, okay, and again, this is all just examples. These aren't actual conversations I've had, but let's say players felt really strongly about the drugs testing issue, and they wanted to get their own list drawn up for esports. So we had our very own esports performance-enhancing drugs list. So, we wouldn't have marijuana on it, for example. I think that's a big issue for some people. Maybe we wouldn't
have Adderall because we want NA to have good teams again. Yeah. I mean, it was cooler when that was the case.
Right. That, possibly. You said it, not me.
The down, Richard. This is when I'm allowed to strike again. I had to chill back for a few months. Isn't he going to give us credit? I'll give you credit, motherfucker. I'll wait. Yeah. I'll bide my time. Right. Oh, I've tripped over. Could you help me up, Thorin? Here, take my hand. So I can kick you without you being able to defend yourself.
My toe right in your armpit, you cunt. Yeah, but so the whatever it is, okay, like this steroids maybe. A lot of players, a lot of people in esports in general use those because we're in a very image conscious industry. So maybe we don't want those on there. Again, there's no studies in place that would suggest steroids would help improve your esports performance. We haven't done those types of studies. So anyway, let's say they wanted to do that. Now, to create your own fucking drugs list that gets recognized by like WADA, for example, specifically for esports, this is going to take loads of fucking expert legal counsel, and that's going to be fucking loads of money, right, and everything else. So you're going to have to, the players shouldn't have to pay for that, right? We need a slush fund for the union, which eventually will get topped up by subscription fees or whatever. That's how trade unions in Europe work generally. So I don't know. I kind of feel that I want any groups that are out there on that basis to come and be able to get this money. Now, a lot of people are going to criticize, Richard, why are you trying to put yourself ahead of it? I'm saying this plain. Like, I don't want to fucking run it. I just want to make sure it's impartial and that whoever comes in and will have access to this money and sort of be the unofficial head or the voice of the player union is going to handle things responsibly. There's no cliques, there's no politics, it's open to all, blah, blah. That's what, that's all I'm really trying to drive here. But
what's hilarious as well, by the way, is I already know there'll be players and people in the scene who'll be like, oh, he shouldn't be involved. I don't like his background or what he's done. But here's the thing. What's funny is what you've just described there is actually the ideal scenario for any democracy. Like, one of the great things in theory about the concept of democracy when the Greeks invented it was they actually had a notion that the ideal person who is supposed to be the leader for whatever period of time, that's why they made it a couple of years, is they actually made it where you were going to be able to be voted in whether you didn't put your name forward like an American candidate. Okay, the idea was everyone who was eligible was sort of in a big pool and people just voted for who they thought should be the leader. And the concept was the ideal man to be the leader is the person who doesn't want to be a leader, because therefore as a result he's pre-selected to not want fame, all the positive all the possible corruption that comes along with wanting to be famous and control things and have money. Because that guy is not out for that. He doesn't want to be the leader. He's only going to be right, I have to do this job. I've been put in this position, so I'll just try and do things as reasonably as I can, and it'll be sort of like a responsibility. I'll treat it as a job, and he won't do it for any of the other egregious reasons that we know can fuck the whole thing up. So in that sense, that's why the ideal person to do it now actually is someone who's just trying to do it for player benefit. Even when sometimes the players are like, I don't want that. Yeah, we're doing it for your benefit, mate, whether you want it or not. That's the whole point. Whereas at the moment, right now, if you let some players take over immediately, I'm pretty sure some of those players would be big name players and they would just start fucking other players that they don't like. Some guy who left their team and they hate that guy, or they think that he did fuck them over out of another deal. They wouldn't be fair with that guy, and I think they should be honest about that right now.
Yeah, but this is why I think formalization's gotta happen, because look, it's got to be anonymous. Right, like if you're a member of the union, it's got to be at your discretion whether you declare that you're a member of that union or not. Right, I agree with that. That's again a staple in trade unions. But I think formally announcing that the union exists allows people to at least approach it and talk about their views and issues. And I think if you're representing yourself as a union, again, you have a responsibility to hear that. I think you have a responsibility to be open to all. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to accept anyone, but of course, most trade unions wouldn't turn people away because they're a subscription-based business, effectively. But one of the things that I said you know, and I've had a few conversations now, was like, I want to put something literally, formally, legally, if need be, right? That this money's here, okay? And I'm just going to pull the strings for like whatever it takes, 3 months, whatever is agreed to be a reasonable amount of time. And at that point, I will be legally required to stand down. I'll have no claim to the money, right? That we've raised, that I've raised. And then you have to have an election for my replacement. And at that point, Richard will fucking moonwalk out of the union, and whoever wins that election runs the show and gets the money. And then it's there then. It just exists then. I never need to do anything again except when they release statements about their intentions, write it up on whatever news website I'm working for so I can go back to journalism. That, to me, seems like a good deal. And apparently, you know, what I'm learning is there are actually lots of groups of players that just are non-formal groups across different games that collectively bargain together, that talk about their problems with each other, and it's almost as if having one formal place could connect all of these groups, and I think that would be good for everybody. I think that would be good for them. I don't even know if the groups that are formed know that the other groups exist. You know, there's like no channels for communication whatsoever. It seems really weird to me that we're so close to having an actual recognised players union, and what might happen is several come out at once, and because it's fractured, it loses any real chance at potency or influence.
Yeah, the problem is the union's only as strong. It's like the whole thing, the chain's only as strong as the weakest link. If it's not done properly, that in itself will fuck it up. Because, for example, if there's multiple unions, well, that's exactly what the companies want. Because then they go with one union and use that to leverage against you. And now you're competing against yourselves, the players.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think the problem with this scenario is a lot of the players involved only see it as a good thing now when they're the really rich and powerful ones who see like, right, I can gain something right now if I do this mini union. What they don't realize is it's all supposed to be about the bigger picture stuff, and that's why you have to all get together and make it really fair. Especially since you won't always be the powerful guy, by the way. You won't always be in demand now. One day you'll be the old veteran guy who still wants to play in some sense. So you have to, if you're so dumb, you can't be in any way altruistic for other human beings and have any compassion. Do it for yourself in 2 years, mate. Set things up so that you're in a good position then when you're not with all the leverage now, you know. Otherwise, by fucking people over now, they're just going to fuck you over when you get to the point where you don't have the leverage.
Yeah, it's something that's not really talked about as well. There is a lot of, right. You were right. I mean, to identify, obviously there's a lot of people that have reservations about me being involved, right? Because I'm the guy that's been writing about X, Y, and Z, and some players don't like it. Some people think it's unethical. It makes me a polarizing and divisive figure by nature. But I would definitely state plain, I don't think there's any player with my particular skill set for this particular role initially, once we can hand it off. But players routinely actually are often we talk about managers and team and tournament organizers fucking over players. We never talk about players doing shit to fuck over players. But actually, the idea that everyone's in solidarity, it's super rare that's true. It's very often players that do things to others because of politics, like you say. Let's imagine a scenario. Look at Semphis, right? Like, he with that interview he's done, think of all the pressure that's put Cloud9 under. Yeah. Now, that's going to be a very fractious relationship, and I think that's why you would need somebody impartial to even have any chance of mediating there. If Semphis was head of the union, for example, or a member of Cloud9 was head of the union, someone might, I'm not saying would, but it might make the working relationship difficult, for example. So. Well,
also, that's why that whole concept that fans have that teams are 5 men who all like each other and get along is so fucking feckless. It's so cretinous because I've never in the history of esports seen a proper professional team. This is, as in, okay, maybe in the early Quake days when it really was 4 friends who happened to be good enough at the game to play. Maybe then when they didn't go to LANs and stuff, that might be possible. I've never seen in like CS, League of Legends, Dota, a full 5-man professional team who attend events around the world with each other. And so as a result, by being a top team, to some degree can't only get friends, because they sometimes have to replace a friend, etc., who all 5 liked each other, really got on, and never had problems. Every team, even the ones you think of now as the ones that were the closest. So, okay, in League of Legends, people would at least have said, okay, but I've got one that we can pick out, guys, which is at least we can pick out Cloud9, the League of Legends team Cloud9, who kept the same 5 players for, I think it was 4 straight splits, and even when they had problems internationally, they kept the same players. You'd think, right, well, those guys must have all really liked each other, really got along. The second they started having big problems and one of their players left the team, I did interviews with them, and basically it came out like, no, some of us didn't get along, and some of us actually were kind of held at bay by the other ones, and we had these little cliques, and we just kind of what made it work is we had a working relationship. You know, we got to the point where we were getting success in this way, and so I gave up this and he gave up that, and we just kind of agreed to disagree, and we worked. So even in what could have been the exception, it's never the case. So the idea that players are ever going to all just get along is very naive.
Well, yeah, and of course, classic example of that in CSGO is Virtus.Pro, right? I mean, they're the guys that have the fucking the working relationship. It's not as if they're all
Look how fucking amazing they are in game, despite that.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, I need to just check because Sam's actually here, producing the show here, and he's sat over there. Sam, if I touch this button and bring up my browser, is that going to ruin everything? Yeah. It will ruin everything. It will. Okay, well that's not what I wanted to hear, but I needed to bring up some note type stuff. Yeah. Yeah, if you could grab that for me. Right, okay, now this is where we awkwardly need to fill for time. Apparently if I touch anything on my desktop, it's going to fuck the entire show. But I want to do a look ahead to DreamHack London, obviously. Thank you.
Let's do it.
So yeah, we'll definitely do it. But this is the magic of TV right here, folks. So.
You know what I sometimes like to do in my downtime? There's this site called Alphadraft, and you can make these sort of like fantasy teams, like put together a team for DreamHack London maybe. You pick out some players, you maybe get like, I like to go with Device, he's my stable guy, he always puts up very good numbers no matter what the game is. I always spend my big salary on him. Maybe I'll get in some guys from EnVyUs is there, so if you want to get a risky pick, maybe go for someone like Apex, could go huge, could have a big tournament, could maybe not do so well. Kenny S used to be a monster. Now maybe not so much. He's always highly priced, but I tend to veer away from him now, And they also, I happen to know, just sort of philanthropically, pay mad money, like sickening money. I'm talking like sort of money where, probably someone's probably getting fucked somewhere in the world to get that sort of money. It's just the way the economy works. There's no clean money in the world, or in esports, Rich. They pay sick money to these like really, really good guys in esports, though. Like guys who deserve that money, they need that money. And so, you should probably, if you're a good person, altruistic, probably support them.
Well,
probably play.
I'm still intrigued. Where did you get the phrase sick Skrilla from?
I just made it up myself. I mean, Skrilla is what some of the urban types in America
why
refer to money as. And so I just took the word sick, which is sort of like a gaming thing. Oh, sick, yeah, sick, man. And I just attached it to Skrilla using alliteration, which my, I think it was a year 10 English teacher told me was like an interesting technique when writing.
Okay, well, I'm very glad to hear that. So, let's look to. I've got things in front of me now. I think. Do you wanna do the look forward to DreamHack London first, or should we talk about because we've missed an event, haven't we?
Yeah, a massive one, a 250k one.
Yeah, so we should
let's do a bit on that. Okay.
Yeah, fuck. I totally skipped my mind. This is because the show's been so poorly prepared, and the MTG thing fucking threw me off. So look, I'll bring up my things on my Mac from this. I'm trying to think about how I can get stuff off this computer onto there. But tell us about that, Duncan. Fill for me.
Yeah, so obviously there was the ESL ESEA Pro League Invitational in Dubai. Like, fuck me, you guys have marketing degrees and stuff. Like, do you even know what you're doing? Like, I'd call it something else. I'd call it like ESEA Fuckfest. That's a way better name. So memorable. Be getting all over the place. That probably has a better like EFF. That's a great name. EFF. It's way better than yours. Anyway, so at this tournament, which by the way, again, compliments to the chef, ESL. Whew. The thing about ESL is it's not just that they can't organize a piss up in a brewery. It's that they would actually specifically hire a brewery at which they would have it during its off hours, and yet there was then some sort of legal requirement that you could only ever have people in the brewery after the opening hours for 2 to 3 hours, and they could only consume a certain amount, and then they'd go in there, and then it would turn out that like logistics for getting the really good beer, like those taps get turned off 2 hours before, and they only have the draft beer right now, and they have like tonic but no gin because it's a beer factory. And all these, listen, if you want us to have piss ups in breweries, it has to be this way. There's no other way it can be. What about like having it in a bar or something? Like that's unhelpful. And can you please stay on topic that we have to have it in this brewery? So that's like sort of how ESL ran this tournament, because what they did, Rich, is they thought, you know what would be really cool? Dubai is one of the hot places in the world. Now, ironically, they didn't mean it actually as a kind of a pun there, but it turned out to be a hot place. They decided what we'll do is we'll have an outdoor tournament in the fucking desert. And then they got there and they were like, it's really hot, actually. You almost can't even just walk around without water outside. Fuck actually playing video games outside in that sort of scenario. You can't do it. And so then what they did was they had to hold a lot of it indoors. And because of the way it was indoors, they couldn't have like their casters. You know, the only people that anyone wants to hear talk about the game. Yeah, they couldn't have any of those people cast the games. So instead, they had a bunch of fuckers who were just sat at home on PCs and stuff, just casting the games. You know, not very well. Just okay, I guess. I guess it was okay, actually. It just was disappointing because it wasn't the people you normally used to hearing. Okay, so a lot of the Epic games early on wasn't the normal production value, which if you're going to hold a massive event, production value is usually a little tip for people who are budding, massive companies who've done loads of these events. You usually want production value to be one of the bigger qualities of the events, People tend to remember that. Because now, in a history, when someone goes back and watches that VOD, they're like, oh, who's this guy? I guess he's just one of the best casters they could hire. Well, I mean, it is ESL, so we all know it logistically will never be the best casters they could hire. So anyway, because again, they've painted themselves into a corner. They're like, yeah, but I already have people on staff. Well, I wouldn't hire shit people to your staff myself, because then you're forced to use them. But, who am I again? I don't know how these companies work. So anyway, in the actual tournament, Rich, the main storylines for me... The biggest ones, I think there was just 3 big storylines, and they go in descending order, okay?
Yeah.
So VP won the whole event.
Yes.
And basically, anyone who thought, after we did the episode after the major, ESL 1 Cologne, I know there was people who actually kind of were a bit outraged. They thought I was underselling EnVyUs, because I made that point to you, Rich, that Virtus.Pro to me played so well, even against Fnatic in the semis at the major, that I actually thought... They did almost everything they could to win. In the majority of cases, they would have won. And I think if they'd have won that Fnatic semi, they would have just won the whole tournament. I think they would have won a second major.
No, I absolutely agree with that.
And so there was people who were like, come on, man, you're underselling EnVyUs.
No. It's fuck all to do with that.
What's brilliant is this tournament showed exactly what I was talking about. Because what happened was VP turned up. They went into the full God mode VP plow. And this time, guess what? Fnatic couldn't pull a second miracle in a row out. This time Fnatic lost, got beaten handedly, and VP really did just comprehensively win the whole event in a way where they get against the best teams in the world. And so this just shows you the power of VP when they're in absolute God mode, which... What you always have to, unfortunately, balance that with is you always have to say, yeah, this is the ceiling they can hit. But even VP can't do this regularly. They can't just do this and become the next great team and win the next 5 events. It's not going to happen. It's amazing they've done it for a couple of events in a row. They're probably due to drop off at some point. But when it happens, it is always spectacular. So, incredible stuff.
This is the reason why I think I fucking deleted it from my memory. I couldn't remember if we'd done a show for ESL Dubai, because I remember talking about it. But anyway... I said this, I don't know if you agreed, but we were like, obviously, when VP win an event or do really well at an event, they seem to drop off for the next 2. This seems to be how they operate. And I said I didn't feel they were going to do much at this event at all. And of course, they won the fucking thing. So, I mean, I don't know. Here's what I feel, all right? I think after the 16-0 against King win, in Valencia, I think something changed big time in the team. I don't know what it was. I don't think maybe some of the comments I made about the relationship between Taz and Neo and Pasha and all of this. I don't think Taz liked that very much. I think he felt that was a bit out of order of me. We've apologized. We're all cool. I don't know. I don't know if all of this together has prompted some frank conversations. You know, you've seen Pasha has been almost like demoted. He's not the AWPer anymore. Neo's done it, and in Neo's fucking knocked it out the park. Like Neo has been incredible, like just hands down. I mean, if there was ever any doubt that he is the greatest CS player of all time, and I think obviously there used to be a lot of arguments, from Swedes mainly, Forest. You look at the just overall where they're at now, and it's like Neo's just once again like reinvented himself. It's fucking insane, really, that he's been able to just do this. So, for them to win this event, like you say, is just absolutely fucking crazy. And to beat Fnatic en route to doing it, and then you think, well, you've beaten Fnatic. It's been another fucking slog because you are playing the best team in the world. You know, it's not like it's a testament to how good VP are right now. That, like you say, Fnatic are relying on miracles to beat them. It's become this great matchup. Right now, it's one of the best matchups you're ever going to see. The games are always dynamite. But Virtus.Pro get through to the final. They're up against TSM. And you're like, well, it's TSM. So VP will probably lose this. And it looked like at one point they were going to fucking throw it. Right at the end in the last map. But they fucking managed to hold their nerve and win. And, the run Virtus.Pro have had in that tournament is fucking ridiculous for anybody. So...
I mean, by the way, I have to emphasize as well, the way they beat Fnatic, and would have also beat them, by the way, in Cologne if they'd won the second map, was just beyond anything we've ever seen. Like, when people really think now everyone's on board with Fnatic's the best team ever, etc. They don't realize you can go back at any stage during this lineup's time together, and they have patterns which no one else can come close to. Like, okay, think in the history of this lineup, the Olof M. Crim's lineup of Fnatic, of when they've lost best of 3 series. Even when they lose, it's very close. They get a map. They're really in the game. They could have won. The other team usually has to play absolutely phenomenally. Fnatic plays very well themselves. This is one of the only times I've ever seen Fnatic lose a best of 3, and for 2 of the 3 maps just get spanked. Yeah. Like, absolutely not even in the game, getting fucking toyed with by another top team. That doesn't happen.
9 rounds across the second 2 maps in the series. And on top of that, like I just as a side observation, is there anyone that's as good on train as Virtus.Pro right now?
No, I think that they might be the best team in the world on that map. Yeah. They're fucking unreal. And the thing was as well, another thing that changed for this tournament for VP, this is one of the things. Don't blame yourself, by the way, if you ever predict VP will do badly and then they do really well. I can tell you from talking to Virtus.Pro players, and from knowing, especially Neo and Taz going back into 1.6, they themselves have no fucking clue when they are going to go into this mode. Sometimes I've heard them complain to me years in the past about, like, we've got to cut this guy and things are going really badly. And the next event is when suddenly they just snap into God mode and win the whole event. And after the event, they're all like, yeah, I love that guy. It's all great. But they themselves had no clue. And it just happens. It's a rhythm thing. They just get into this mode and suddenly all the problems go away and everything's just super light and they're just wrecking everyone. And one of the crazy things about this team, okay, is when they're in the God mode, the thing that's so insane is every person in the team starts winning clutch rounds. Yep. What fucking team in the world does everyone win clutch rounds? That doesn't happen. Like, anyone who tells me now that, in NIP they were all winning, no, they weren't. Forrest actually didn't win very many clutch rounds in his career. He's not really known for that. In teams like even TSM, okay, Carrigan's not winning 1v3s all over the place. Like, what's mad is in this team, everyone starts winning 1v2s, 1v3s, winning the 2v3s. They're just a magical team in that sense. They really do have this level that's unreal. Well, the guy for me who really turned it round in VP was Snacks. Had a terrible summer. He went from being one of the all-time great players to actually being pretty bad in their team. He was having real problems. This tournament, he was the MVP. He was absolutely amazing. And against Fnatic particularly, he just fucking dominated Fnatic. And Fnatic is a very
How many kills did he drop? Wasn't it fucking like...
It's a lot.
Like, across the 3 maps, didn't he get like 60 kills or something?
He had some mad amount. He was really dominating.
It was unbelievable. I'm just going to check that stat, actually, because... So, yeah, 63. 63 kills to 41 deaths. Absolutely just a monster. 50% headshot ratio as well. Just, a fucking beast. But, it was really interesting because, like you say, he had this terrible summer. Bialy had problems as well in the team, and they were the 2 guys that had, like, rejuvenated this lineup. But when everything's firing, you combine that with this new look, Neo Orping. I think they're a real frightening prospect. And just quickly, because I don't want to eat up too much time on the show, obviously you do the rankings. I'm starting to sound like Scoots now, right? Like when we're filling for time on GVD, right? But how high are VP going to jump up, predicated on the last, 6 to 8 weeks?
Right, I just did it, actually. In the most recent one, I think I jumped them up to... I put them up to 3rd. What happened was Navi, the ones who dropped, they dropped 2 spots to 4th.
Yeah.
TSM went up 1, they went to 2, and VP's at 3rd at the moment. Now, the problem for VP is they have some phenomenal results recently, but the thing is, they've only just started to outrun when they had the mini slump, when they had the 5th to 6th at Gfinity and they had the 7th to 8th at Face It. And so they still got to outrun that a little bit, but they're obviously in position now where, amazingly, VP, who a while ago were as low as 7th, I think, or maybe 6th or 7th. Now we're in position where, hey, if they keep going, they're going to crack top 2, which they've actually never done in my rankings before. I think this is the highest they've ever been.
The other big story of this tournament, I know you'll enjoy talking about this, as NIP. I think we saw an NIP that clearly was loose and free from all of the shackles that seems to have been in place before. And they played incredibly well, like a lot better than they have for some time. I thought it was, to be fair, I didn't see the Cloud9 game. I watched the EnVyUs NIP series, which of course was 2-0 to NIP. And it was a real stark contrast to how they looked in Cologne. And I kind of feel they went into this, I think, knowing it was their swan song. And I think that played a big part, actually, in them being able to just... I mean, they were laughing and joking in between, games and, exist, like, it's all gone to shit. They were having fun again. But I think it's over for NIP.
That's what I thought. I just felt like, here's the thing. I'll give you the analogy. Okay. So in CS, a phenomenon I have always found really crazy. Think when you've played yourself. Whenever you get into a literally impossible round. So think like, say you're playing Train and you're on T side and you're 1v5 and the CTs are all set up on all the sites and you're just stuck like you haven't entered a site yet. In that scenario, it should be the most impossible scenario. You should not even be able to get a kill because you've got all 5 opponents. They could be anywhere. You haven't even entered the site. You've got no positional. You've got 0 advantages. The amount of times when you're in the 1v5, you don't win the round because it is impossible pretty much. But the amount of times you still get 1 or 2 kills it just doesn't make sense on a normal logical level compared to a normal round. You might get more kills in those rounds than you do on a standard round. The reason why, though, is because for you, there is now 0 pressure. You can't win the round. You know you can't. Therefore, you just kind of think, I'll do whatever I can. Meanwhile, for the other guy, he's got all the pressure on him. Like, we have to win this round. We can't lose, surely. Where actually, that makes him sort of play a bit weirder, where sometimes he'll take a risk. He think, it doesn't matter if I die. The guy behind me will get this kill. And so in a bizarre way, it conflates to make a circumstance where you will actually perform way better than you would even on a normal round where it was full 5v5. And so I think it was like that for NiP. There's no pressure whatsoever. They're also, by the way, in a group where if they'd have gone out in 3rd and EnVyUs had gone out instead, I wouldn't be slagging on NiP. EnVyUs is a better team than NiP, so that'd be absolutely fine. They're in a group that's a tournament rather that's super stacked. They're not even supposed to make the playoffs, so I think they did above and beyond even what was expected of them. I mean, they beat EnVyUs in a best of 3. That's fucking insane. They got a map off TSM on TSM's best map. That was the best you could hope for.
Yeah.
I mean, in this actual tournament, one thing they did that they haven't been able to do, it's something I identified as a problem they had, is they had a map that was working for them. They had Dust 2. They won Dust 2 against Cloud9. They won Dust 2 against EnVyUs. These are 2 of the best Dust 2 teams, by the way. Then they won it against TSM, who was the best Dust 2 team. Now, with that said, they still lost to TSM, and they still have the key flaw that I fucking love because I think it's so idiotic, which is I think Exist is the worst drafter in the history of CSGO.
Well, let's be clear.
Yeah?
Against EnVyUs, they play them on Dust 2 and Inferno. Right, if I was to say you, Duncan, what are EnVyUs' best 2 maps?
Dust 2 would be the first one I'd say, but those would definitely be up there.
Yeah.
But if you think that's bad, it's the TSM draft, mate. They played TSM on Dust 2 Mirage Inferno. That's like you almost want to lose. It's almost like willful. Listen, everyone's going to say, but they won Dust 2, didn't they? Yeah, you still don't play the team who is better than you on that map. And for anyone who says, but they've won, so they're better on it, well, Luckily, you're only in my mind right now. I don't have to talk to you. So that's the end of that conversation. But no, that's amazing that they won Dust 2. But the problem there is they'd loaded the deck so hard against themselves, they were never going to be able to win it at that point.
But they've done it time and time again. They've done it time and time again. Yep. We were talking about this like God knows how many Gfinity.
Classic Nip.
Yeah, I know. It's it's got to the stage now where it's so ridiculous. I just respect it.
I like it in a way. I think it's funny.
I just respect it.
It's almost like trolling professionally.
Yeah, it is just like, I can just imagine everyone else on Nip going, "Oh, come on, Richard, can we not do it? Can we not do the hard draft today? Can we pick the maps we practiced?" And Richard's just like, "Let's see what happens." And it's like he's got his little notepad, and it's just
basically,
like,
Richard,
this team is good on this map.
It reminds me of this part in Ricky Gervais's stand-up where he's talking about animals, and he's talking about animals that have been observed in nature to engage in homosexual behavior. Get ready, guys. Buckle up. So what happens is there are actually dolphins where they actually fuck the other. There are male dolphins where one of them fucks the other male dolphin in the blowhole. And so Ricky Gervais makes the joke that even if you were a gay dolphin, you'd be like, "Come on, mate, can't you just fuck us in the ass?" And he'd be like, "No, it's in the head or nothing." That's almost what I feel like with fucking Exist. They're just like, "Listen, Exist, we've played for so long. Listen, we love you, man. Can you please just set up the draw so we have a good chance?" And he's like, "It's the hard way or it's no way."
It's fucking
get out
true,
there
though.
And fucking play.
Like, and that's what I mean. It's like I respect it in a sick fucking way. Like, I just do. It's like they want to just win on fucking hard mode. And, fuck it, man.
Maybe we don't know this, but NIP is actually a 50 Shades of Grey style experiment where Exist is the secret owner of the team. And he made them all sign contracts saying he's allowed to make the hardest masochistic drafts ever. And they just have to submit to him, the master dominant. And then they're all just the submissives in the team. Maybe that's what's going on, Rich.
Right. So, but overall, Duncan, cause look, man, listen. This
There's only so much baiting we can do in Nip fans.
Right, look, this team, I'm pretty confident now it's done. So, will you say something good about them now that they are dead, Duncan?
Hey, they're one of the best teams of all time. Here's the thing about NIP. The part that was the most disappointing to me was the part where Nip Magic died. It was the part where they just started losing all the time and they weren't even losing convincingly. I even liked the period earlier this year where they were having all those amazing Nip Magic type series. They're beating Fnatic in a best of 3. They were coming close to Fnatic in the major. They still had crazy exciting games and they were up there, in my opinion, with VP, like the teams where you put this team against any other team. I don't know if they'll win, but they'll make a great series and it'll be really awesome to watch. So they are definitely one of the all-time great teams in that respect. The problem is, as with a lot of careers in the arts, in sport, when you go on for a bit too long with the same team or a guy doesn't retire when maybe he should have, listen, I'm fine with it. You can do it. It's your own life. But it does kind of a little bit sour the end of your career because we don't get to remember you as the great, amazing. But we kind of remember the team who lost to, lesser teams and didn't make the playoffs of a tournament and then lost unconvincingly. And it's not that cool. With that said, by the way, if this was the last event for this NIP, I don't know if it is. I don't know what the charting of it like the next events is, but it would be a cool way to go out because the way they went out was they still did amazingly upset the odds, win a map off TSM Dust 2. They made it out of the groups. And what's more, they went out with Get Right playing fucking amazing CS, doing all the crazy shit we love to see from him. He's still a great player. I think that would be a great way to end this lineup of Nip. And then, hey, some of you'll stay, some of you'll make a new Nip, but we won't have the same baggage and expectation. It will give you a fresh start if that happens,
Well, look, so, because we always do this on this show, it's a feature of everything I do. I don't like, used to do it on First Blood as well. The word on the street from very reliable sources is Get Right is in talks to join another team. Obviously there's plenty of hurdles to overcome. But Get Right is in a position where he has options, shall we say. So this is another reason why it makes me convinced that this is the last time we will see this 5 play together. I think Forrest might retire. I hope not. I still think he has a lot to offer, actually, as a player. But certainly Get Right is the star, and that he's in talks with some very respectable organisations that he could slot into. So, I mean, I think the most telling point about this was, I don't know if you saw this, but I think it was Get Right made it was either a Facebook post or a tweet, and it was him and Forrest, and he said 6 years. And of course that refers to when Get Right first come into professional Fnatic professional play in sort of 2009, and obviously Forrest was there. And I get the impression that what he's meaning by that is we've played together for 6 years, but that time is now at an end. So that's what I would, if I was a fan, I would assume that, and then based on what I've heard, I think that era is over, sadly. But it's good news for Get Right. I think he's gonna get either way, which out of the teams that are being talked about, wherever he ends up, it's going to be a wonderful new challenge, and actually it's going to put him in a better position to win things. So it'll be interesting. So watch this space. Final talk about Dubai, and it's a shame really because it fucking escaped my memory with the MTG thing going on. We probably should have looked at this way more in depth. But just some other storylines to pick out. Obviously, TSM made another final, didn't win it, but TSM are doing what TSM do, right? They're still being, consistent. They're always there and thereabouts at every tournament. And of course, Fnatic did lose. So I want to ask you just quickly to summarize these two talking points.
Okay.
TSM getting to a final, losing to Virtus.Pro, potentially disappointing. There's still uncertainty about whether or not that lineup will continue, and of course now Fnatic losing this event. We keep talking about are the wheels coming off on Fnatic. Obviously, it seems a bit silly when they've just won a major, but they don't feel like the same team. Like they had a miracle run in Cologne, literally. So just about TSM and Fnatic, anything to worry about if you're a fan of either of these teams?
For TSM, I don't think so. I think TSM are fantastic, and I think this is an event where they were very close to winning. I mean, I think they did amazingly. Like, here's the thing to consider about TSM versus VP, the way the final went. That final blows my mind, the way the map draw went. Because TSM themselves, I mean, actually, I'll just double check, but I think TSM did some crazy shit in the draw, like the map they banned. I think they actually banned out Inferno or something. It was either, I'll check which one did which. Let me see. No, TSM removed Cash, which is, first of all, not the best TSM map, but it's one of the better TSM. It's up in their top 4 or 5. And importantly, VP have been losing Cash recently. VP aren't liking Cash, so you'd want that in there for your TSM. VP removed Inferno, which is a good map for Inferno, and as a result allowed TSM to have Dust 2. So both teams did something crazy, okay? For VP, they didn't ban Dust 2, which is normally their go-to ban, which is the one map they're bad on, and it's the only map they got wrecked on in the final. So VP could have had literally their best 5 maps for the entire best of 5 final. You'll never get that in CSGO, by the way. They could have had it. Meanwhile, TSM did their part to allow VP to potentially have their best 5 maps, whereas TSM could have slightly changed it so that instead we would have had Inferno instead of something like, for example, Train, or I would have said Cobblestone, because that's the one they're usually banning. So instead, if we had Inferno instead of Cobblestone, that wouldn't be so one-sided VP. So it would have given TSM a slightly better chance in the series. Even so, they almost won the event. They were really, really good. And the guy I was really impressed with was Device on TSM. Because even though he lost a best of 5, he had the most frags in the entire series. The guy got over 100 kills in a best of 5. So basically, the brilliant thing about Device and what's changed about his career is he isn't the Olaf Meister who does like the 4 big rounds that win you the map. He just every round delivers 1 or 2 kills, and every map you can put him on the board for 20 kills. That is a brilliant fundamental basis to have any team on.
Worth noting as well, Duncan, of course, it used to be semi-finals and finals where he'd go missing, and now it's semi-finals and finals where he's coming alive.
He's done
even
this
to a
twice.
Ridiculous extent in Cologne, where he did it with a fucking mouse he never used before against EnVyUs.
That's the key point I'm trying to make, is that in the 2 series recently he's lost, he actually still played really well in both. And so that is a great sign if you're TSM going forwards, because that was the main guy who had the choking issues. And as far as I can tell, he's totally over it. Yeah. Now, what else is going on in the team? I still think these are both really close series they've had. I think they're still a fantastic team. VP's not going to play like that every time. If I'm TSM, like I've mentioned on the other shows, I'm still not worried. I'd still be holding the course, as it were, and knowing that your time's going to come. You're still a really, really good team. In terms of Fnatic, this was a worrying one, I will say. It's true VP were in God mode, but like I said, I've never seen Fnatic lose a best of 3 this hard.
The worrying point, like, here's the worrying point. Is that Crims was really far from... Like, Crims is Mr. Dependable, Mr. Consistent. He does what he does. There was obviously a very brief period of time where I think, pound for pound, there was a real strong argument about him being the best player in the world, and then Olaf Meister just fucking went into God mode and blew him away, and it seemed to take a little bit of the shine off. But Crims was always dependable, always reliable. This event, I don't know what it was, but just didn't seem to have any impact whatsoever, really. It wasn't like his old self. And this is coupled with, again, I don't want to throw rumors out there. Some talk about fucking retirement. I can't even believe that, by the way. That's one of the wildest fucking stories I've heard. But people message and hit me up like, oh, Crims might want to stand down and, focus on some other shit. And then you have a tournament like that. I mean, you got to remember, of course, the crazy thing about Counterstrike is there's shit just changing all the time, evolving. One conversation on a Friday, by Monday's completely forgotten about. Absolute unequivocal facts. Like I say, NIP definitely approached JW. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. That definitely happened. We know these things can change on the flick of a switch. But this was weird. This just wasn't like Crims at all.
No, he underperformed. The thing with Fnatic is, the key thing was it was the fact that VP is so exceptional and they were the ones who played in the semi. So there's that factor still that I'm still wondering about. I'd like to see Fnatic play a best of 3 against... What I'd love to see, is Fnatic play someone like EnVyUs or Na'Vi or... Yeah, maybe even TSM. One of those in a best of 3. If they lost to them by handedly in any sense, then I'd be ready to say, okay, maybe the Fnatic era is coming to a close now. But considering this was one of the poorest results they've had recently, they have still placed top 4. They have still won a map off the eventual champion. They've still strung together another good finish. They've run something now, Rich, like 15 straight top 4s in a row.
Oh, yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean, it's still... I wouldn't be ready to quite call it a night on Fnatic yet.
No way. And I don't. But here's the problem. Here's the problem, Duncan. Eventually, something's going to change in that roster. Whether it's JW goes to another team, right? Or Crims retires, or... fucking someone breaks the bank and makes Olaf Meister the fucking highest paid God Emperor of Counterstrike. Like, whatever it's going to be, something will change eventually on long enough timescale. Nothing lasts forever. Yeah. And the reality is that I think with Fnatic, it's not like an NIP where I think because they played together so long and it was an iconic lineup, if one goes, I think they all go. I honestly... No,
here's the thing. Fnatic will definitely not wait until the bitter end when everything goes to shit. Yeah. Here's the crazy thing about Fnatic. They're at the level now where they've had so much success, but there obviously some of them have at least thought about other things. That it's almost at the stage now where it can go both ways. They might just have one big bad result. Like for example, let's say they play TSM again in a really big semi and they lost again to TSM. Maybe that would be the one where it's like, okay, we're just done now. Like, we had a great time. Or even crazier, they're the sort of team where if people really are considering retirement, let's say, Richard, get absolutely crazy. They win all the majors in 2015. They just win the next one as well. One of them might just be like, right, now I retire. Now I'm just, I've done everything now, mate. We've done everything. What's the point in keeping playing? We've won all the majors. Like, maybe that's when...
The thing is, if I was a CS player, though, and let's say I've won all the majors in a year... Right, yeah, all right. Maybe you do think to yourself, you know what, I've got money in the bank, fuck it, I retire. I know that the day I retire, that's when Valve announced, like, the International for CS. Yeah, so fuck that, like, I would cling on to the bitter end. I'd be like the tick that feeds once in its lifetime. You just hide in the bark and then you drop out, like, onto whatever unsuspecting animals walking underneath. If you miss out on Valve finally fucking going ham and saying, do you know what, yeah, fuck it. All right, our stance has been a little bit stubborn, but here you go. Here's the CS International. Boom. 18 million. Boom. Fuck it. Right? Because the CS community will want to piss on the Dota community and just have a mad prize pot, right? Like, I'd be like, can I get back into Fnatic now, guys? No, get fucked. Get fucked. You know, so yeah, you've got to cling on. You have to cling on at the bitter end, I think, right now, because everyone's waiting for the next stage of CSGO. You know, so I don't think it's the end of the Fnatic era. By the way, I definitely don't. I think that would be a ridiculous thing to say, but you know, something to be mindful of. Like I said, they did win ESL 1 Cologne. You can't take that away from them. It's a fucking major, but it wasn't fluid. They had to struggle. They had to dig deep. And everybody knows, everybody who watched that game knows they pulled out unthinkable miracles. Twice against Virtus.Pro, once against EnVyUs, with that 15-10 comeback on Dust 2 to win then in overtime. And then obviously they slaughtered them on Cobble. But it was far from fucking easy for them. And when you're having to dig this deep just to fucking, you know, win tournaments to be in the running, it's never a good sign, especially when you've been imperious in the past, in the not too distant past. So again, watch this space. I think just to time constraints, we'll skip the fucking DH London preview. Fuck it, we've all got lives, right? Yeah. You've got videos to record in your cold house, and I've got takeaways to order. So, but let's talk. I want to talk about EnVyUs, right? Before we wrap up. Because I nearly missed them out. And of course, envious to this team that it's like, you know, this new lineup. They arrive on the scene, they win IEM, right? And everyone's like, well, it's a crazy format, but what will they do at the major? They get to the final of the major, they lose to Fnatic. We've already talked about that, like the fucking God mode. All right, okay. And then I can't remember what event they went to after that. There was one though, wasn't there? Or am I tripping?
No, the major was the one before this one.
Right, good. And then obviously they're out here in Dubai and everyone's looking at them again, and then they get wrecked by Fnatic. So I've said that when new French lineups come together...
No, it was NIP that beat them.
NIP, sorry.
And they lost to VP as well.
Yeah. So I've said that when these French lineups come together, they're unplayable for the first month or two of their existence. Like literally, hands down, no one will beat them. They have that confidence, that freedom, that je ne sais quoi, dare I say. I don't really know what that means. Right, but they fucking, you know, they are just unplayable. It's always been that way. Have they peaked too soon? I mean, do they seem to be getting sort of progressively worse at every event they attend? Demonstrably so.
If you ever go back and watch the old episodes where we talked about EnVyUs, you'll notice I was never super hot on them. And part of the reason why is I actually think EnVyUs in a microcosm have kind of had a little bit of what Cloud9 had when Cloud9 had that sick little run where people just didn't, part of it wasn't just that Cloud9 was all hitting form, which they were, and that they had this little advantage on people. It's that no one really had figured out how to play Cloud9. And once people figured it out, it's almost like there's a meta game of how you play Cloud9, and now teams are getting very good at it. So in the same sense, when EnVyUs first put this lineup together, and the lineup itself, no one outside the team knew how the lineup would work. Like, for example, you're taking players where we've all played, if we're top pros, we've played our whole career against Kenny S. But Kenny S isn't used in this team in any way like any of those other teams. Not only that, he's not even a star focal point. So now what happens there? Do we not focus him at all and we just let him do what he wants, and maybe actually not having the pressure anymore makes him pretty decent? Do we focus on different aspects? Like, how is he going to use Apex, who'd been quite underwhelming recently? So I think they had a really good surprise factor on people initially. And the fact that they had so much skill in their lineup, they were playing very loose. They were playing an entirely open style. They just had a couple of really nice performances. I think Apex overperformed a bit, and they were just blowing people away. And so I think that's cooled off a bit. And now what we have to find out from EnVyUs is what's going to be the reliable style of EnVyUs and what level of team they are. My sense is they overperformed a little bit at the first events. I think they're going to end up being like the 4th or 5th best team. I think they're going to be around that level. I think it's going to be like them and Na'Vi are going to be below the group of the Fnatic, VP, TSM, below those guys. It's going to be them and Na'Vi just below, and then maybe if Cloud9 gets their shit together, they can form in that group. But I think it's going to be them around there, and I think sometimes that means they can win a tournament if things go really well. Probably more realistically a semi or a final. But I think maybe people got a little bit too hot on them early, because I think they still have to show us. Like, the key thing about being a great team is you have to be reliable. You have to be consistent. So at the moment, they don't have that. They don't have a reliable style, a consistency, and they haven't entirely decided which map pool they're going for yet. I noticed they've been varying between the old EnVyUs maps and then some of the newer ones like Cobblestone. Yeah. So I think they have to figure those two things out. What's the style we've got? What's our identity as a team, basically? And once you know that, we'll find out if they've really got any chance to be a top 3 team. So I'm not sure yet, actually.
I'll give my opinion on this. I think this Dubai tournament, bit of a fucking anomaly. I think NIP obviously the last hurrah, the charge of the Light Brigade. I don't think they gave two fucks at this event. I think it made them very hard to play against. And I think EnVyUs just got caught out. I mean, sure, they got beaten on two of their strongest maps. I mean, just two. We all know how good they are on that. But I don't think it'll happen again. I think moving forward, this is still a team that's going to challenge for the #1 spot. In all honesty, that's what I believe. I think they will at least be on a par with TSM. Over the next 2-3 tournaments, once we've had time to sort of have a look at exactly where they are. So that's my thoughts on that. So look, let's wrap up the show, Duncan, because as I said, we've got things to do. Just a few thoughts about DreamHack London. Obviously, we're going to be there doing our thing. You looking forward to it?
I am actually, because I mean, first of all, as anyone will know by some of my more scandalous moments, not a fan of travel, and I'm not a fan of going to places that I'm not really familiar with, and just things aren't as good there. So things aren't great in London, but I know the lay of the land. I know what the fuck I'm doing.
I was going to say, but there's probably a million places in the world I would rather go to, including like fucking war-torn Somalia than London.
No. There's a lot of places I'd rather go than London. Not so many that used to be Soviet satellites.
You will notice, of course, if we criticise London, no one's going to lose their job over it, by the way.
Because people aren't little crybabies.
Yeah.
So, anyway, maybe because they had proper education, I don't know. So, one of the things I do like about London, though, is I just have to get on a train and go a couple of hours. So that's cool. I don't have to do any flights. So, in theory, I should be a lot less stressed out. The event itself, it's not super stacked, let's be honest. But what's interesting is it has a nice little hierarchy to it. You basically have a hierarchy of 4 ranks. You have TSM and EnVyUs are the obvious favourites. They're the two top teams, and we expect one of them to win. Then you got the next little group, which is Gamers 2 has replaced Mousesport. So Kingwin's obviously a team on the rise. Dignitas they're around a similar level, but they seem to be going the other way. So they're the two teams who have to you'd expect them to at least make a semi if they want to really sustain themselves as a top 10 team. Then the third rank is going to be SK, who've obviously improved. They've been picking up better and better players. You got Renegades, who, for them, Renegades are the sort of team who are always complaining, like, we're always getting such hard draws, etc. Well, now's your chance. Beat Dignitas, you're in the top 4, And then the last one is kind of the also-rans, it's the Easy Skins and Copenhagen Wolves, and no one expects much from them, but hey, maybe they can steal a map. And so I think it's a pretty obvious hierarchy then, and I think it's fun in that sense. There's a logic to the event.
The idea of a UK CSGO team is just so funny. Right now, I did some commentary for a Gfinity UK event where I was actually casting the event, and I had some of the lesser teams that were playing in that event. I mean, you can imagine if you're going out in the first round of a fucking UK CS tournament, like the standard, there was like 16-0s, 16-1s. It was horrendous. And Zeus only rounds from like the team that was going to go on and win. That was inarguably better. And loads of them messaged me on Twitter like, it's just no good for our self-confidence.
Yeah, I'd stick to fucking knitting, mate. You never get bullied and intimidated in that game.
No,
I fucked up the knit and the pull.
What do you want me to do? Like,
cardigan.
This 16-0, there was a few rounds.
It's not for you. Listen,
if they just gone the other way and maybe got one kill. Who knows? You can't dress it up. You got fucking shit on.
Yeah, listen, son. You give it your best chance. Come down the refinery with me and the lads. I can talk to the manager. Get your little job there.
Yeah.
You get your little wifey. You get a place. It's not like that for us in the UK. Okay, it's not like the glitz and the lights of Hollywood or wherever you may, Hollywood Boulevard. This is just the UK. It's grim here.
I don't know if you ever had this, because I think when we went to school, obviously sports day was a bit different. But I do seem to distinctly remember one where there was some event where literally everyone was a winner. I don't know if I just got put with...
Was that like some sort of Special Olympics?
I was just going to say, I don't know if I just got put with a group that maybe I shouldn't have been with. Or maybe should have been.
It's at that moment you realised why the teachers were being so nice to you all year long.
No, but like all the other events were super cool. I can't even remember. It's so fucking long ago in the annals of time. But there was definitely one event where everybody won. I was like, I don't know about this. Pretty sure that fucking fat Wheezy kid, he didn't win anything. He fucking definitely didn't. But we all got medals. Like maybe that's what we need to start doing for UKCS, like to help. encourage and revitalize the scene again.
So what we're saying, Rich, is if they had a Special Olympics type major for CSGO, UK would be banging it out there. We'd be getting golds, mate. Get the fuck out. We've got the team to do it.
Prove us wrong, Easy Skins. Prove us wrong. Anyway, I think we'll end the show on that note. We will obviously see you at DreamHack London. Apologies for the recent movement of scheduling. That's all my fault. I've been travelling all over the place. Look at Duncan. He's mega angry about it. Yeah, I had to wake up at 8 in the evening now that I'm back in the UK. This is unacceptable. But yeah, so that's my bad. We should be back to a regular schedule, which of course is Wednesdays, 8 o'clock UK time. Duncan's back in the UK now as well, so no more having to wake him up at 4 a.m. in Korea with the waifu pillow just out of shot and all that. He's back to where he belongs, in his room, surrounded by the dirty socks and the used Kleenex, and of course his legendary winter coat. So we're in for some good stuff, and we certainly hope you'll join us. Just quickly, Duncan, any content coming from you that you want to plug?
Let me think. I'll have a bunch. There'll be a bunch of Thorin's thoughts videos.
You interviewed anyone lately?
Yeah, but not anyone for CSGO. I've got some CSGO reflections in the pipeline, though. I can't say who because I don't like to do so in case it breaks down and then people hassle the play, you know. But I'll have some big names. Like I've started doing the reflection series. Like I'm trying to make it more of a focus to get it going regularly. And I've got a bunch of big name CS pros who are all locked in and we're going to do it. And so if you haven't seen that, obviously a lot of that series in the past was League of Legends because I was doing it for bigger companies. Now I'm in a position where I can do a lot of the people you want to see for CSGO who are really interesting guys and haven't maybe done a really long interview like that. So hopefully we can get them in between an event, and I hope that I can get that to the level where it was before when I was doing it quite often. I was kind of in the rhythm, you know.
All right, good. Well, looking forward to seeing those. Thanks to everyone who watched. Thanks to, of course, Alphadraft. With DreamHack London around the corner, I recommend you get over to Alphadraft's website and do the fantasy thing where you pick players and you win money, unless you're like me, and in which case you don't win money. But, you know, don't tell anyone that, Duncan, because I'm meant to be an analyst at Gfinity events or whatever. Oh, and of course, yeah, that just in. I think I might be at the Gfinity at Birmingham. I think we fixed it. So it's going to be me and you together again in the UK. Right. Easy Skins. But anyway, until we see you on next Wednesday, while we count our piles of 6 Skrilla, we will see you then. Thanks for watching, and until we see you next time, may all your drafts be alpha. Peace out.